It's 2 o'clock, man, in the West. So let's get kicked off. I hope you brought an entire presentation for us. Lots of PowerPoint slides. Totally
Oh,
kidding. Totally kidding.
usually do, but just me and you today, bud.
Oh yeah. So we have a lot of people on this call. We originally we were charging for this. It's a rough market there for the mortgage industry, and the question came up. If we want to get this information out there, then what if we just deliver it for whoever wants to log in and check it out? So we gave back the money to the people that paid and made it free for everybody else. So wouldn't it suck if you paid for something and then you found out it was free?
I was just gonna say I didn't get paid. I didn't get
No,
paid
no,
back. Like I paid to be here, but I didn't get paid back.
the speakers still pay. Yeah, that dude, the conference I'm at, we're just, by the way, for those of you logged in, there's Q&A in there. You can definitely ask any questions. We'll handle all of your questions that you ask, or as many as we can get through. But the gig I was at, or the conference I was at the last 2 days, they wanted me to speak on AI. And I'm like, awesome. I love speaking on AI. And I sent them our speaker fee and all the package deal and for travel and all that stuff. And they're like, okay, well, so we don't pay for speakers, but we'd like you to pay us to speak. And I'm like, oh, you're speaking? And they're like, no, you're speaking. I'm like, I still don't understand what you're saying to me right now. And they're like, yeah, well, all the speakers have to pay to speak. And I'm like, I'll just attend. So
Yeah,
I have a rule where I won't pay to see myself speak.
yeah,
Um,
it's a good
and if you
rule.
want me to speak for free, you have to basically be Ryan Hills. So
It's true. It just came up to
that
our event last Friday.
that was so cool. So all right, let's get down to it. Lots of changes have happened. You are the first of four webinars that we're doing. Um, and leading off, just because we want to talk to you about where the market is right now, what's happening out there. This conversation could go a number of different ways, but my goal for everybody watching is that they get a little bit of hope, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of understanding, but that they get no discouragement. Like I talked about this when I was speaking in front of your group. We have enough of how sucky things are, and
Oh yeah.
so we could talk about reality. That's fine, but always with the idea of like, all right, what's the positive of all of this reality? Because we've been through
Hmm.
tough times before, and we'll go through tough times again.
Yeah.
But this is just, it's a normal market. If you want to not deal with this type of ups and downs, then there's plenty of other industries that would love to have you. In fact, if you work at a grocery store bagging groceries, you probably get a pretty consistent experience. You're not going with the ups and downs. Companies, if you've been working for Safeway for years, that's probably a great job for you. You also don't get to make the kind of money mortgage people get to make. You also, it may save you some tears, but that's a tough job. So,
Oh,
so
I
in
don't
the
think they're
mortgage
safe,
industry,
Ken. Like
it's
they
the
added
opposite.
self-checkout. Like so
I
that and
know.
that's like you're still not safe there.
That's true. Self checkout with a tip line. I
Yeah.
don't know what this says, but I mean, you could just answer a couple questions on there. And it's like, I just got that I did a self checkout burger, and I like did the computer order, and then it said, "How much would you like to tip?" I'm like, I'm standing at the counter
Tip
ordering
myself.
this food and tip. Yeah, yeah. So you're right. I mean, definitely nobody's in a safe market, but I would take ours over any industry in the business.
Sure. I
So,
still love the business, even though it
oh
has been
yeah,
hard. And I love your no negativity rule. I love it.
yeah. All right, so Ryan Hills, I don't know who wouldn't know who you are, but let's just get that out of the way today. You have been in the mortgage industry for a lot of years.
Yes, a lot of years.
How
Oh
many years
04.
total?
Oh
Oh,
04.
4? Okay.
Yeah.
And have done a number of things. You're not just, you haven't just been doing loans for, all that time. You've been doing the resource.tv, which you've been doing for about the same amount of years, right? Was it pretty
15. Yeah.
quick?
We started it in response to the Great Recession, just trying to keep our head above water then. So yeah, like 15 plus years. One of the old dogs in content creation, man.
Yeah. So you've got the resource.tv. Are you still releasing every Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
15
So
years of consistency. Like I'm proud of that because it's not easy. So yeah, every Monday.
yeah. So anybody can watch these videos that you're doing. They can, I mean, you've done just a ton of stuff. And it's not just those videos. You've done video interviews with a lot of people. You read a lot on the market. Every time something happens, you're on it. Your loan officer career took off with the videos. If anybody wants to listen to the podcast and learn more about Ryan, Lessons from Last Time podcast, I interviewed Ryan Hills and had one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Just getting super serious about your past and the things that you've been through. But now you are a regional.
hmm
with Movement Mortgage.
Regional director, movement, pretty big territory. So Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, all the way down to Colorado.
Yeah.
So big job, travel a lot, but blessed to work with a lot of amazing people and amazing leaders. So it's been a blast, and that content creation, man, is the story. We talked a lot, has been a part of that journey of just trying to keep my head above water as an LO, after the Great Recession, and then putting me in touch with amazing people like yourself, Dave Savage, who we were just talking to, people on the East Coast, Renee. I mean, it's opened so many doors, just kind of pushing myself outside my comfort zone and continuing to, somehow push out content and, struggle to remain relevant 15 years later. That's tough. It's easy to
Oh
be
yeah.
relevant hot for a year or two, but
Yep.
to keep coming out with stuff that's relevant, that's a tough job.
Yeah, that longevity is, I mean, well, you've got to really care about what you're doing, right? A lot of people come up with content. Like I did a TikTok channel and did content for about a week. And then I was like, no, that's exhausting. So you have to be passionate about it, and you have to be always researching like the latest and greatest. And by the way, we have a Knowledge Cube TikTok channel that is amazing. I just tried my own ADHD CEO TikTok channel with just ADHD tips, and then I got, distracted. So, all right. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So, that I wonder how many people figured that out on my channel. But you've been doing this for a really long time. You pay attention to everything going on. More importantly, in this conversation, you have to manage, a large group of people. You have people in different markets, like you said. So, people are dealing with different things, but for the most
Hmm.
part, everybody's dealing with what the rates have done and how difficult that is. A lot of questions right now are, where is this business going? And you always have to be asking yourself that question, right? You always have to
Yep.
go, all right, what's next? And what should we be worried about? What should we be excited about? Let's just start with today. Did you see the Fed announcement today?
For sure, man. Absolutely. I think everybody did, and everybody probably saw the reprice that came into their rate sheet after that.
Isn't it like, you hear people talk about this is like when you get the flu, one day you're like, I just want to die. And the very next day you're like, oh, we're back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to be like that, but this is changing things, right?
Well, I mean, you talked about positivity and nothing negative. So the last two shows were released were both really, really positive, good news shows, but it wasn't just touchy feely. Like, I think things are okay. There's some data behind it. And we had
Mm-hmm.
talked about helping realtors and potential buyers and sellers identify the early sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And days like today reaffirm, like, hey, I think we're on the right track. Like one of the statements that I think everybody on the call, after an incredibly difficult year, if they knew today that the worst of it was behind us, I think they would all feel better.
Yep.
We don't even know how, what the run up looks like, how long, how short it is, but I know because it was so difficult this year, if they could go, I know the worst is behind us, they're like the physical postures of people would change. The weight is
Mm-hmm.
off. And that was kind of what I threw out there. Like, hey guys, I don't want to jinx it, but I really think we're there. I hate to even say this out loud, and I put some tacticals behind it, but today's like today, reaffirm it. And I genuinely do believe, and again, I don't want to jinx it, but I think the worst is behind us, and there are absolutely better days ahead. I mean, think of the run we had, guys, after '08. The longest expansion we typically had prior to that was about a 10-year run. That would have taken us to 2018. Here we are in 20, we really had a run all the way up through about 2022. And so we had what is that, a 14, 15-year run of prosperity and expansion. And I don't know if it's going to be another 10 or 15 years, but we just got through some real tough adversity. And there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be an amazing run on the backside of this. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm getting my mind right, my team right to take advantage. And that's what we've been talking about all year, is like taking market share, planting seeds. And what's tough about taking market share and planting seeds is it takes a while for those things to come to fruition. You don't get paid right away. If you somehow, steal a referral partner or a builder, they might not have business right away. It may take them 6 months for you to realize that market share.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do that, and the more, the LOs and the companies that did that in 23, that market share finally comes to fruition January, February, March, April, May of 24. And that's what I'm excited about. So that's the encouragement right out of the gate to give you guys, is like, you know, I'm not going to profess that this is my May 10th moment or I have a crystal ball, those last two shows, I gave you some really good reasons why I feel that way. But I really feel like we're on the backside of this thing, and we'll never go back to 2020 level, guys. We'll never go back to 2021. It just won't happen. It wasn't healthy. You got to remember
Mhm.
it was in a response to a global pandemic, so we don't want to go back there anyways. But we'll get on the backside of this, and we'll get back to like a normal market to where we're getting wins under our belt. And it may not be 15 a month. Maybe it's only two, three, or four or five a month, but I promise you that's better than having zeros and zeros and zeros and zeros in your bank account. Do this, this, and this.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I love that you said that. And I do think it definitely feels different. My confusion comes from, I see as the rates get worse and worse, and people had felt really, they felt all those rate increases, right? So every mortgage person felt that. And so as they were doing it, they were being very vocal online. A lot of Facebook posts about how bad the rates were and how tough the market is. And it's so weird that the rates aren't that bad anymore. And I'm not seeing those same people talk about how great they are. Like they really are good historically. They're really good, but they're better than they were last year. And so I don't understand why we're not seeing that. But that's something that every loan officer's got to convince themselves of, is that this is actually okay. And I interviewed a woman on social media a couple weeks ago. She was amazing, and she was talking about marketing to Gen Zs and younger millennials. And she's like, we don't know the rates were awesome. We weren't paying attention to that. We were getting out of college. And so
Mm-hmm.
why would you tell me the rates are so bad instead of telling me about home ownership and how I could potentially buy a house and how would I get qualified? What does that look like? And it is so interesting that we really do dwell on the bad, but really for everybody else, for an average homeowner, all they want to know is, hey, what's my payment going to be? What's this going to be like to own a home?
And what's the opportunity? That's such a good point. Like, why frame it up in, well, the opportunity could have been better in 2020, like, okay, to your point, like they're going, what? Okay, that ship sailed. Like,
Dude,
there's no
yes.
point for you to bring that up. But what's
Yep.
the opportunity now? And we all know because we're loan officers and realtors, we know the opportunity. So that's a great point of like frame it moving forward. There's no point in talking
Mm-hmm.
about what could have been 2 years ago. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what is it? It's December 13th today. Again, guys, this is the early sweet spot. I don't think our realtors have really got the news yet. So today, our job is to go fire up our realtor partners because they've been beat up too, and they're
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of sulking and going, well, maybe just make it through the holiday. Like we got to go fire up our realtors. Hey guys, this is the
Mm-hmm.
early sweet spot and be able to articulate why. Because in my opinion, you wait till rates drop another 200, 300 basis points, we're going to be right back into a 2020 type frenzy moment where they're overpaying, and they're skipping inspections and they're fighting 15 other buyers. Well, right now, rates have improved. That's why it's called the early sweet spot. Beat that rush,
Mm-hmm.
get the house now, be able to do an inspection. Don't overpay. Don't have 15 other offers, or wait 6 months and then go back to 2020, frenzy level. So our job today is to go fire up our referral partners and let them know this is the early sweet spot.
Well, dude, we have to fight the FOBO, right? I mean, everybody knows about FOMO, fear of missing out, but the FOBO is fear of better options. And I have this mad like FOBO. I won't even book a hotel because I'll be like, but what if there's a better option? And so I'll do all of this
Yeah.
research because I have a legit fear of something better. And we've seen that with people with, well, the rates are really high. What if I buy right now and then there's a better option next week? Or let me wait on houses because maybe there's a better option later. And so we have to fight that as an industry to be like, do you like the house? Can you afford this payment? Do you want to seal this deal right now and stop paying rent for first time home buyers? People forget rent is not fixed. Rent is adjustable. And so if I can get you a fixed rate mortgage and you can afford it, like, let's talk about that. I didn't buy, we were looking at Sun River to buy a house back at the beginning of the pandemic. Cause I'm like, if they're going to make us stay at home, I'd rather stay at that home.
Right.
I love my house, but I'd rather be in Sun River any given day if I don't have to go to the office. And so I remember we were looking at these and there was like three offers on one of the houses we wanted. Or no, there's two offers, us and another offer. And we were about to make our offer and they're like, I should let you know there's already an offer. There's balloons all over now.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen
Cool.
is that a Zoom thing? Um,
Are you doing that?
no, that's just Zoom. It's a new thing. You can do all kinds of, anyway. So, so we didn't make an offer because I'm like, well, what if the market tanks and then, So would have been one of two offers, and now instead we don't have a house in Sun River because it just doubled. Like the prices there doubled over time. So I think people forget that, and we should be talking about that. Like if you like the house and you like the price, you know, markets will go up and markets will go down, but are you happy with where you're living? And our neighbors bought in '07, right at the height. They bought their house, was a new community. So they bought in '07. I bought in 2011. So I paid a few $100,000 less than they did, which was awesome for me. When they sold, they had like $500,000 in equity. So like an increase in value from when they bought. So it doesn't matter if you buy high. I mean, if you're going to be in there a long time, you're going to get that money anyway because home ownership goes up. If you would have waited and rented that whole time, that money's gone. You don't get that extra money in
Right.
equity. So home ownership's always going to be a big wealth builder. And I think it's that positive message we can be getting out there, and mortgage people can be getting out there.
And we can solve a lot. Like we can be problem solvers a lot. Sometimes it is just about getting into your first home and showing, one of the graphs I saw today was the net worth of homeowners versus renters, broken up by income bracket. And
Yes.
like that's an easy one, right? To kind of like show what's possible. So it's not always about, and that's a cool way to like help somebody get their first home. But on the show previously, we talked about the locked in effect. And my good friend Logan will debate me on this. I just know I'm right. But saying that there isn't a lock-in effect, but Wall Street Journal had a crazy story. I don't know if you saw it, but how many married couples are divorced and because of the higher rates weren't able to sell their home and go their separate way and buy their homes, they're locked into their home and still divorced living together.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense when I really think that through and the variables that we just, lived through. And so that's one problem to solve. And I know it's a weird one, but if they're going to go and they've already been divorced, I think everybody knows that they probably want to move forward and get into separate homes. They haven't been able to. I know it's a weird piece of content to throw out there going like, hey, I can help you with that situation, but there's an opportunity right there to help somebody that's been locked in. There's a lot of people that also made rash decisions through COVID, and my folks are one of them, moved to a different city without really doing the homework.
Mm-hmm.
And now going, well, I don't know that I love the weather, I love the politics. My problems followed me there. There's hundreds of thousands of families that are locked into that decision because they couldn't move back. And a lot of them may want to move back to their old community or to a different one. And they've been locked into that tough, rash COVID decision. Those are two major locked in effects on top of the first time home buyer that's been locked out, on top of the move up buyer that's like, yeah, I would buy that home, that move up home, but it doesn't make sense to swap my 3 with a 7. I mean, I just talked about millions of people that we can go solve problems for. But again, only if we're out there, offering that solution, firing up our referral partners to help look for those opportunities. Again, it might be weird, talk to a locked in divorce couple, but they're out there. It's a
Mm-hmm.
problem that needs to be solved. And I don't care if it's weird. I want to solve a problem and I want to get folks into homes. And that's what pays me, right? As a loan officer. So I'm going to get past the
Okay,
weirdness.
so in the Q&A, I want somebody to come up with the right marketing slogan for getting that demographic, the people living together while divorced.
Throw
Uh,
in AI while we're sitting here. There's 150 people on. Like somebody
exactly.
throw in an AI, give them the prompts, and then copy and paste it because that would be funny.
Oh my gosh. I never even thought of that. What I always think of, how many loan officers are between the ages of 45 and 60, right? Like 90% of them, right?
Yep.
So many loan officers are in this age group, like me. You're not quite as old as I am, but in this age group where our kids are gone and it's time for us to make a move. And my wife and I are talking about moving. She's finally on getting on board with it. But I just want to downsize. And
Yeah,
so
that's the
the
fifth or
thing
sixth
is,
opportunity that's been locked out of that I didn't mention. Ken,
right,
you're right.
dude, here's the thing. I would buy the same price house I have right now. Um, I would just get a nicer one that's smaller, and maybe has a view or whatever. So if I was to get that house, I'm still going to need a loan. It's not
Yep.
going to be a big loan, but it's bigger than zero loans. And so it's those type, but nobody reaches out to me. So like, how are people not reaching out and saying, "Hey, I notice your kids are off to school. What's your plan now? Like, what are you guys thinking about doing?"
Yeah,
And
such a
a
great
realtor
question.
could, that's a great realtor question.
Yeah.
Are you guys, gosh, you have a big house and um, no kids. What's the plan? Are you like planning on keeping the big house when they come back and just start the conversation? Because I'm shocked. Nobody's brought it up to me. And in
And
many
usually it's
cases,
just a
this means
different
getting your
layout
idea.
for your, like for
Right.
your scenario. It's just a different layout. Like Ramblers are popular
Yeah.
when they want to downsize.
Yep.
Just give me a
I'm
Rambler,
not that
a little bit
old.
different layout. Yeah, you are.
Not for a rambler.
Dude, I'll take a Rambler any day of the week. Shoot. I'm not too proud, but
Mindy's looking in a 55 and over community. We don't qualify yet, so there's some discrimination still out there for those of us not 55 yet. But yeah, she's like, I mean, we're starting to have that conversation. What if we get a smaller, one story? But again, we're having it internally with each other, not with somebody calling me and saying, hey, I did your loan, or I would like to do your loan, but let me just have this conversation.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, strategies called, the Mortgage Coach Annual Review.
Yep.
It doesn't always have to be, and I love scripting and Scriptapalooza. You're at Dave's house, so I feel like we should shout it out. But
Uh-huh.
sometimes a call is just exactly what you just said. Hey, how you doing? Notice the kids moved out. Have you thought about downsizing?
Yep.
Actually, yes. Hills is right. We've been locked out, locked out of making this decision, and now we'd like to do it. It's oftentimes just asking that pertinent question, like, "Hey, for my folks, you moved to Medford. You still happy there? Oh, you aren't. You'd like to come back to Washington? Simple
Yep.
question, right? Simple question to find those 6 or 7 opportunities we just outlined.
Dude, you could now we're talking marketing, but you could go straight into like Aria's at Boise State. You go onto that Boise State parents page and say, hey, just wanted to do a quick poll. As things have been, as my kids are now out, because now everybody on that page has kids in college. And you guys, my kids moved out, like we're looking at downsizing. Has anybody have experience, had experience with this or whatever? You just float it out there as a subtle marketing piece. But you could totally do that. Like there's just things people can be doing. But again, we have to convince ourselves it's a good time to buy. And that's the piece where enough people need to come around to, stop putting that stuff on Facebook that makes it look like the mortgage industry is not great. But by the way,
Well,
you
let's
did
not
mention
skip
it.
over. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I am in Dave Savage's backyard right now. He's on a podcast inside, but he's going to come join us in a little bit. That's why I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt in December
He might, and that's why I'm wearing a flannel in Washington.
and shorts and flip
uh,
flops.
Hopefully Savage comes in and hangs out with it, but let's not skip over the psychology of what we just did, and keep in mind the psychology that most of us have had. Rates suck, the industry sucks, it's contraction. Like it's been that. Like, and we're not going to stay in the negativity, but let's be vulnerable here. Like we've all had our ass kicked for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easy just to get sucked into that negative spiral. All we did is just start thinking about opportunities and positivity, and you could tell like the human nature, like you start to get excited again, guys. What do you want to do? You want to focus on how little money we just made, how high rates are? There's no benefit, there's no win in that. Or do you want to get
Mm-hmm.
really excited and get creative and go find those opportunities? So for the LOs, for the leaders, like I'm like, let's get our sales staff fired up again and focusing on the wins that are out there, because man, it's so easy to get sucked into that negativity that we just lived in 2023. And it just so happens to be kind of timing with the new year. So whatever, cool, we'll time it with the new year. But
Yep.
there is a human psyche version to what we're talking about that is just will help you get out of that negative space that you've been in all year and start focusing on wins, whether they come right away or not. I promise you, it's way better mindset to be in than just focusing on all the ways that we just got our ass kicked last year.
Yep. Now, interesting data point for you, and this is just from my own experience, but I actually earlier this year, people kept asking me how many people are going to get out of the business. And you don't really get out of the business until December 31st, right? So people give up their licenses, they don't renew. There's zero reason to walk away from the business in the middle of the year. And also, we don't have the data on who walked away until we get to the end of the year. So my comment starting June, July, August, I was saying, I think if we have a good rate event at the end of the year, if the rates start to come down, that more people will stay in the business than leave the business. And funny enough, dude, we are having a record December. We have never sold this much CE in a December.
Oh wow,
So it was happening. Like people were
nice.
waiting and we were like, did they get out? What are they doing? And then now, like this time of year, it should be wrapping up because people need to get their licenses renewed. And it's not just finishing your CE, it's going in and submitting your renewals for all your states. And so normally by this time of year, it's starting to slow down a little bit, but no, it picked up. And I think it's just because loan officers are like, wait a second, maybe this is going to be okay. I mean, you don't want to
Yep.
take your cards off the table before seeing the other, like before knowing, okay, is this, is this going to be a thing? We all know it's going to turn around. You're just waiting for when. So to not renew your license right now, you're basically saying, yeah, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, and yeah,
But
again,
I
it's what I
think
said
there's enough
earlier. You
hope.
had one really bad year in the last 14 or 15. Like I'll take those numbers all day long.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep.
Most industries are boom and bust cycles in the same year, guys. We've had an amazing 14-year run. The numbers from memory, Ken might know better, but I remember reading them was 188,000 at the peak unique NMLS numbers down to 88,000. I've seen some speculations of only 60,000. But I think it's speculation. And you said it best, like we're not going to know until the end of the year of how many actually people stay in the business. But either way, it's a pretty big contraction from the height, and it kind of needed to. Like I hate because I love the business. I don't want anybody to lose their license or quit. But like we're not built big enough. We don't have that much opportunity. The pie isn't that big
Yeah.
anymore to
Right.
support that many mouths. And so some of this is
Right.
just part of going from 4 trillion to 2 trillion.
Yep. Yeah. And by the way, the numbers were never released by the NMLS this year. So people are taking shots at it, trying to figure it out. But yeah, it's not, it's, the real numbers are really not there. We just asked the state of Oregon because they were in doing our CE for next year. And I asked her what the attrition was. And she gave me the Oregon numbers, and I don't have them with me, but it was 30% or so had knocked off just from Oregon licensees. But there's too many numbers, out there that are incorrect. So every time somebody sends me numbers on MLS stuff, I'm like, they didn't release it this year. So it's just guesses for a lot of people.
You
The
and
other
I
thing
are the
is,
same way, and I think that comes from creating content. Like you say a thing only a few times when you can't back it up, and then you're like, okay, I'm not
mm-hmm,
going to do that again because somebody called me to the carpet. Now I keep hearing these numbers. I'm like, give me a link, give me a link, give me a source, and,
yep,
and nobody can give me the source, so it's speculation.
yep,
That's why I'm hesitant to say these are the numbers for for 2024 because I just haven't seen a hard and fast, real
yeah.
concrete source on what those look like.
One, you did say, this is just what I've heard from people, and that's a safe way to say it. All right,
Yeah,
I've got you with
yeah.
some questions here. So, HELOC and make the home a duplex. So on the divorce one, you just do a HELOC and then turn the house into two. Mac, that was beautiful.
That's funny.
And then Tina says that there are new LOs entering the workforce or the force. Absolutely, like we're seeing it already. The thing that you have to remember about new loan officers is they don't need to make that much money. Like if you remember your first job in mortgage, mine was a $30,000 base plus a kicker every time I closed the loan, and I had never seen $30,000 as a bartender. And so I got in. I was like, I could make how much? I mean, if you take the average loan amount where you live is like what, $700,000. So you're talking about making roughly 7 grand on one deal, and you get a fresh out of college student who has never made 7 grand in a quarter. Like they'll take that, and they don't have to do that many loans to survive. So our biggest problem is the nut, right? It's the nut that you have to crack every month. And for loan officers who,
It's a concern of mine, but it's also an opportunity for the industry because you said it earlier, we're still an aging industry.
yep,
The adversity aged out and pushed out quite a few people because they were like, you know what, I'm close to retirement. I'm done with this.
mm-hmm,
And this last year wasn't conducive to hiring new blood. There's
right,
some, there's some, what it was conducive for, and let's just call it what it was, like reductions in staff.
mm-hmm,
Companies weren't looking to add brand new people that may or may not produce. That's just the
mm-hmm,
reality of it because they didn't have the luxury of excess margin or revenue to just take that chance. And so we are way behind in adding young new blood to this because of all those factors.
mm-hmm,
And I know lenders right now aren't even thinking about this. They're still thinking about how to right size their teams, shrink down their fixed costs so they can make a living. The Ford mortgage company, like the Ford side of the business still isn't profitable, but
mm-hmm,
we'll figure that out. And the third, fourth, maybe even the sixth or seventh step after that will be, oh, we don't have a lot of new young people in this business. We've got to figure that part out. And so if you're adding talent, kudos. But the industry is going to catch up at some point. And if
mm-hmm,
you're thinking about it now, I think to Ken's point, you're going to get some young driven people that think it's amazing. It's kind of like back to what you said about don't tell me what rates were, tell me the opportunity now. So same with loan officers. Don't
mm-hmm.
tell me what was happening in 2020. Tell me the opportunity now. And there's not. I mean, Ken and I stress about our kids going to college right now and what jobs are going to be there when they're done, this is still an amazing industry. We went through some adversity, but like you said, one $700,000 loan you can get paid pretty handsomely on, and
Mm-hmm.
those are all the age groups that'll be buying homes in the future.
Right.
Does our sales staff reflect those people, or does it reflect 55 and older?
Yeah.
Most of
The
us leaders
mortgage
don't want to
industry is
answer
like,
that
what is this
question.
tickety tockety thing that you've got going
Right.
on? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
skate to where the puck is going, right? Like we're going to have some of those young folks in there so that we're attracting those types of buyers in the future.
Yeah, it is. We brought in Avery, my daughter, to be our social media, Avery, and she's doing our social media for us right now. It's so stinking good what she's doing in there. Like I'm seeing stuff that I was like, wow, like this is amazing. I couldn't have done what she did. I don't think like she does, right? So if you're not young in this business and you want to reach a first time home buyer, you need somebody who understands how to speak that language. And it's just you lose it. Like I can't. I do Facebook a ton. I look at LinkedIn sometimes, but I hate it. I don't even go on Instagram, and I use TikTok for golf memes. So I'm not going to be your best person to market to the next generation because they don't use Facebook, right? I told Avery, I'm like, so can you help us with LinkedIn? And she goes, no, because I'm not 80. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh
exactly.
dang. But like that's how they see it. So we have to adjust then who we're marketing to. But the best way to do that is to have your sales force actually be the ones who speak that same language, getting those younger people, getting people who speak Spanish. Like there's things that we can do right now. I want to go back to what you said about RIFs, reductions in force, and we have seen so many layoffs in this industry this year. You didn't feel it all when we were getting so many people in the business. It was just exciting, and you didn't really. It's like, oh, look at that. When we're losing it, we felt every bit of those, right? Every single
Hmm.
layoff that happened this year was painful for everybody. And you're like every other leader that I'm friends with. This was the hardest thing ever, right? To
For
go through
sure.
where you have to tell people that they did, they worked for you and it was awesome, but there's no way you can keep them on payroll. Um, do you think we're getting close to being done with that?
It's a good question. It really depends on how quick you were to respond to that challenge.
Right.
So, it's a really good question, actually. This is where heart gets in the way as a leader because originally we trimmed the fat
Yeah.
and we did some riffs. That progressed to like cutting to bone.
Mm-hmm.
That's how difficult it was. Cutting to bone for me meant like people I've been with for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than trimming the fat. And so sometimes heart gets in the way and goes, I'm going to prolong that decision. And you get a little hopium because maybe next month is the month that, volume picks back
I
up.
love that. Uh-huh.
Um, and we just saw that in the event that we were at the Masters Coach event. I saw leaders that were already done and made those really difficult decisions Q1 of this year. And
Mm-hmm.
we're on the offensive. In the meeting that we were at, a lot of high level people I look up to and respect. Like these aren't just
Mm-hmm.
bottom tier people. These are all amazing performers in that room. So, and Rich is on. Rich understands. He's at a high level. He understands what I'm talking about. Sometimes the heart gets in the way, and some people made those really difficult decisions up front, and they're on the offensive. And some people they were walking away from that event in December, and they were saying, "Okay," because we were talking about, "Hey, what are we going to go back and do?" Some of them were saying, "I got to start my riffs."
Right.
Real. These are
Right.
high level people. They're going, and I'm thinking, start like, holy smokes! Like, there's a group of people that are already done, and they're on the offensive, and there's a group of people that kind of prolong some of those decisions. And we get why we just talked about it. The heart gets in the way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's why like some people have already done it, Ken, and some haven't. What's really, really interesting, not to nerd out on this, but the public companies were forced to do that quickly. The
Right.
shareholders don't have heart. And so they were first in to these decision making because they had to. The shareholders were like, doesn't matter, cut X amount of dollars in people, January of 2022, maybe even three, right? They're the first out. They're already
Yep.
I wish I had my charts and graphs. I don't have them. There's a new article coming out called Mixed Fortunes. Mixed Fortunes. Some companies are still laying off, and the ones that were first in are now first out and actually trending to be able to finally make a profit, maybe Q4, Q1 of next year. So
Mm-hmm.
it really there's a wide spectrum of people that like maybe postpone those riffs and people that did them really, really early. and now are trending up and on the offensive. So I know that's a really long answer, but that's
No,
where we're at
it
in
was
the
a really good
industry.
one. Yeah, I mean that's nobody ever wants to let somebody go, right? And you said it well. Like if there are people on your team that you're like, I've been looking for a reason, like that's an easy, reason to let somebody go on, to have them on that list of layoffs. But like you said, you get to down to the people that are like the heart and soul of the company. It's the hardest decision to make, especially if you think that maybe next month, like that hopium you said, maybe next month it'll all turn around or whatever. And it just can't, you have to at some point do it. And the quicker you can do it, the faster then, like you said, get back and return to good business. What I wonder is, will there be companies that did a riff early that now that people are riffing now, they would be in a position to then hire those people getting riffed from other companies. That's kind of
Could very
interesting
well be. Yeah. I mean,
if
depending
they
on how
take a no
thin they
growth
got.
plan. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it could be. And I think their mindset's easier right now when you're on the offensive looking for opportunities versus
Yeah.
still looking at your P&L going, ooh, that's a real negative number. I've got to go make some tough decisions. That mindset sucks. That's, we've all
Yeah.
been there versus, all right, we're trimmed to bone. It's all about adding volume now in sales. Let's go figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Acquisition wise, I can tell you we're not done. I was going to ask you if you think we're done with acquisitions. We're not. I know that there you'll still see some companies get together. You'll see some companies. We've already seen a lot of big things, right? Guild had that large acquisition. CMG had a big acquisition. So I think that's still in the mix for people, and so pay attention to that as far as state of the industry goes. You're going to see more of those things. It's an interesting thing to watch, but a lot of times that could be, just a really cool couple companies getting together. Sometimes that could be the runways running out, and I've got to, put my team
Mm-hmm.
on a different team at some point. And so, you don't really always know what's going on behind the scenes. What we have seen though is, and I just talked to the Oregon regulator about this. We've seen companies just drop their surety bonds, and that's a problem because you can't
Mm-hmm.
legally do loans without a surety bond in most states. And so we've seen states go in and take away licenses based on the surety bond expiring. And they're just like, well, you can't do loans now. And so they walk in and they'll give them like they'll warn them and they'll call them and stuff. And then for some companies, that's the last thing. Like they're just hanging on, but they can't afford that. And then once you can't afford that, the signs are coming, right? It's going to be a please leave our business moment from your regulator, which you don't want. Um,
Yeah.
so we've seen that a little bit.
It'd be interesting to be Stratmore and Garth that handle a lot of these M&As because I think we could have easily saw 40 or 50 more this year, but it
Mm-hmm.
was so difficult to value a company that has no revenue, right? Like
Right.
usually it's a multiple of revenue, but how do you value a company that maybe 5 billion, 10 billion in volume, but are making zero or negative 25? And so I think a lot of those talks got postponed or they just died and went away because it was so
Mm-hmm.
difficult to value it. And I know they got creative and tried to just do like an earnout where they weren't paying. But only Garth really knows, what that looks like. But I think if we really knew, we would all be shocked about how many companies were looking to merge or close and may still close as much as I hate to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, even though we're trending up, people still aren't making money in the mortgage business
Mm-hmm.
unless
Yeah.
they're making money off servicing books. Really, like most owners will tell you, like that's buoying the company is the servicing revenue, but the forward side to originate a mortgage, the last housing wire was like negative $554 per loan. They lost.
Mm-hmm.
So to originate and close a loan, you were losing money. If you were servicing, you at least had servicing revenue coming in that helped offset that loss.
Dude, that's actually a couple things on that. Two really interesting things. One, Chrisman was in studio for filming. He's going to be our 24 CE. He's not going to be acting in skits with you. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it would.
But he'll be in our 2024 CE talking about how the market's going. And one of the things he talked about is, yeah, the people are selling servicing rights in order to, free up that capital and be able to survive. But he goes, you have to remember they're selling their income. Like that is
Yeah.
guaranteed income that they have with default rates at like less than 1%, full foreclosure rates. It's income. And so yes, you get that money up front, but you're also giving up that monthly revenue. And so it's not a great thing to sell your servicing right now. But the second thing and this came out of another conversation I was in, is that people right now are buying servicing not just because the rates are so good. They're overpaying for servicing right now because they're buying the borrowers. So they're buying
Yeah.
the refis. So
Yep.
they'll go in
That's
and grab
true.
them, and that's just database. And now they can be like, by the way, I'm your current lender. And you have a lot of freedom as the current lender to get more information about them. You have the do not call laws, don't apply if you're a current client in most cases. And so they're able to make that phone call and actually put them into the database. So I thought that was interesting that some people are buying servicing, and it's not just because it's that guaranteed income forever since the 3%
Yeah. I
interest
mean,
rate. So
every other industry will talk about how the data is the thing to own,
mm-hmm,
and you get first dibs at the refi, you get first dibs at, the purchase if they, apply for or, want to pay off,
yeah,
you own that data. So, that's a good point that people aren't talking about is the data and how valuable the data is. Yes, of course, the revenue is great. And you're right. You start selling that off. That's a short runway, you know,
mm-hmm,
typically it's not a great thing.
right.
And it is usually to pay bills, and, that's a slippery slope. But you're right, man. Owning the data is incredibly valuable. I mean, if you had Elon and, you know, Bill Gates on here,
Mm-hmm.
they would, nerd out on just the data piece of that.
Yeah. Okay. Next, I'm going to ask you about the NAR lawsuits. But before I do, since this is a free content for everybody, like most free content, we're just going to put commercials in it. So buy the Knowledge Cube. There we go. Cube Plus is $360 a year and gives you all of the content that we produce all year long. All right, back to you. So I decided to throw a
Best
commercial in.
speaker in the business.
There you
I can
go.
attest. Best educator, best technology. I second that.
See that? Now we're both doing a commercial for me.
Yeah.
All right, NAR. What are your? I'm not going to say anything. What are your thoughts?
So I actually have been burying my head in the sand on purpose for on this, because being a content creator, it's always been like out of the corner of my eye, but I'm like, I'm not touching that. I don't know how long it's going to take to sift out. But I did just stay at a Capital or whatever that commercial is. I just did stay at a Holiday Inn. Sorry. I sat on a call for like an hour and a half yesterday with an attorney. It was a bunch of like 300 realtors in Oregon.
Oh
Bill
wow.
Peterson, the movement team, put that on. And so I was forced to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I couldn't regurgitate all the legalese. I'll just tell you that. And I'm probably the last
Mm-hmm.
person to speak on this. But I just heard a lot on it, and it's way more concerning. In a way, it's way more concerning to me because there's so many. He talked about how many copycat lawsuits that are coming out now in different states because they see a win happen over here, and now they're just piling on, piling on, piling on, piling on, piling on, and the amounts are very, very large in terms of what we're talking. So and they're triple damage. I think there's a better word for that.
Trouble.
Yeah. How do you say that? Because it's like the
Trouble.
original amount and then times three. Yeah.
Trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about that. Again, last person you should ask. But he was saying NAR at this point has to what was it, man? Put up a bond essentially to be able to fight back, and they don't even know the amount of that bond, and if they
Oh
don't
my
know if they have
God.
enough money to post that to be able to fight back, and if they don't, then they go bankrupt. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot of people that have settled and already paid out because they fear it's going to go into a much bigger thing. It's way more complicated than I even knew. But also at the end of the day, and I asked the attorney this, like, wow, this is really complicated, a lot of variables. You can go back, back and forth between the Supreme Courts, and it keeps getting batted back and forth, and it could be years till we know. I said, but at the end of the day, couldn't this just be solved with a little bit more transparent communication up front? And he's like, yes, Ryan, I'm glad you said that. Like, it really could. Like, I don't believe like this is going to isolate and make buyers agents, a thing of the past. I think that's the fear, or that everybody has to pay them directly. The attorney that's way, infinitely more qualified to talk about this than I am agreed. He's like, it really could just be, hey, Mr. Seller, do you understand that you're going to pay a buyer's commission? Just like we do on the lending side. We're very good at disclosing now. Yes, I attest. Okay, buyer, and then you go to the buyers and the buyer's agent. Do you understand? And both sides agree, a cooperative commission agreement and buyer's agent agreement, that it's fully transparent how they're getting paid. And he basically said, yeah, we don't know how the lawsuits will settle, but the fix might just be one extra disclosure or two. And so everybody's in the know on who's getting paid what when. And that's it. And buyers agents are still a thing. And we go about our day. I kind of feel like that is how this all shakes out. I don't know how the lawsuits shake out, but there's my uneducated answer to that.
Well, if that's the case, they could just put it on a disclosure and use DocuSign. Nobody will ever read that anyway. So that would be. I love it when they put things on disclosures and they think that that's going to make it better. Like even the Apple terms of service every time you upgrade, it's like nobody's reading those. And by the way, those are very hard to defend in court because everybody knows nobody's reading those. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the if it could go onto a disclosure, it would definitely be an easier thing to handle. I don't know. Um, my my take on it is if you tell me I have to pay 3% as a buyer in realtor fees, I'm going to start asking what the realtor does, and I'm going to start getting really like if I find a house and I send it over to the realtor to write the contract, I know they do more than that. But if it's a $700,000 house, do I want to pay 21 grand to somebody to write that contract? And so I think the faster they can get through this without anybody questioning what the fee is, probably the better.
Well, having that
But
conversation up front is a good thing. Like, okay, let's talk about it before we go get
yeah,
too far down the path. I'm buying
right.
750. I really don't think it's worth three. How about we agree?
Mm-hmm.
Operative word, we both agree on one and a half or two. You have that buyer's agent agreement to where,
Yep.
again, it has been disclosed, it's been talked about, it's been agreed upon, and nobody is surprised because the lawsuits are coming from both buyers and sellers, both
Mm-hmm.
claiming that they didn't know.
Right.
Again, this fixes it. It really could. It's a lot. It could a lot to do about nothing. Like at the end of the day, I think it might just be a couple extra conversations where everybody attests that they know what's happening and when.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows how? I mean, there's a lot of money being thrown around right now. We're talking billions of dollars, and when they start talking how NAR could be bankrupt through it, that part does get scary. But at the end of the day, I still think there's going to be buyers agents, even if it's not paid for, through the purchase price. I think buyers still could figure out, and maybe like Ken's point, like I'm not going to pay you 3%, but I'll pay you one, and maybe that's just extra line item, closing cost.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, we don't finance fees in lending, unless Fannie and Freddie change their mind on that. We don't finance fees, so it's going to
Right.
be a closing cost. And we talked about, well, we all know how closing costs get paid. So $500,000 house, I'll give you 520, and you give me 20 back for closing costs. Like that still could
Mm-hmm.
exist as long as it, is underneath the max thresholds for each loan product.
Yeah. Okay. I'm switching the subject again for you. So I today, like literally today, I got a Zillow notification. So I track, like I said, I really want to move, and so I'm always kind of tracking what houses are selling for and where I want to go. So I'll get like, hey, a new house is for sale. And like many people, and I'm sure you're the same way, especially around your lake, you kind of look and you can see it'll be like light red if you've already clicked on it, and then dark red if you haven't. So my whole area is just typically light red, and then as houses have jumped on the market again, it's there's a lot more coming up, which is exciting. But today, and I just took a screenshot of it for you. So I want to talk to you about competing in this market against people that aren't doing it right. So today, and I want to read this word for word for you. Before I do, I should say there's a lot of great builders out there who I really appreciate and who do a really great job. Now, here's a house that just went up for sale 119 days ago. It went on to Zillow, and it says in giant asterisks, and this is just on Zillow, with and it's all caps, so it's yelling at you. With full price offer, builder will contribute $20,000 to preferred lender 2-1 mortgage interest rate buy down program, with interest rates starting at 5.25%, and then in parentheses as of 11/10/23. So, um, yeah. First of all, we've got a date of 11/10 on when that rate was, and we've got no APR, and we have somebody that's not a mortgage person. I mean, how do you compete when these things are going on? Do you have the conversation, or did you used to? Because you don't do loans. Do you still do loans actively?
Yeah, not directly. Like if if deals come in, then we hand them off to the team.
how do you coach somebody, to deal with stuff like this? By the way, Dave's dog just jumped on my lap, so adorable. Um, yeah, how do you compete against that?
It's tough. I mean, it just feels like they have an unfair advantage, and it really sucks to lose a loan, to somebody that's not doing it right.
Hmm.
Losing a loan in general is never easy, but then you're losing a loan to somebody that is just bending the rules or flat out breaking them. It's defeating. It really, really sucks. Or you've worked with a client for 6 months and then they go to a builder and you lose them and you've educated them
Hmm.
for 6 months. Bet you everybody on the call can raise their hand and talk about that exact scenario. Um, so what's tough is coaching them through it is like, okay, well, you know what, that you just got to say, like, call it like it is. Yeah, that absolutely sucks. And, we need people to police these rules that we've come up with. And
Hmm.
sometimes they do good jobs at that, and sometimes they don't. And that doesn't mean that we have to change our integrity, though. I'm real passionate about that. Like, just because other people don't have integrity and are willing to roll the dice with stuff like that doesn't mean that we have to. And for me, I've always played the long game in this business. I've never chased monies or offer or, the next shiny light. And, I felt like it's compounded my success in this business in maybe a slow way, but I felt like it's always compounded next year and the next year and the next year because I didn't, you know, give up my integrity. I didn't chase that next shiny light. I didn't chase that next big signing bonus. And I think that's kind of the approach at this. Like, okay, we did lose that one. Doesn't make it right, but we did. We're going to, remain intact with our integrity, and cream will always rise to the top. And
Yep.
people, all those crooks, we know quite a few of them. Like that, the opposite's true for them too. It may take a while for it
Hmm.
to catch up to them, but that usually does catch up to them. So, um, for me, it's just play the long game and don't change who you are.
Yep. Good call. All right, I'm going to check the Q&A here, see if anybody's got. Remember, oh, this dog almost fell off my lap. Sorry, I'm not. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me just check our chat. If you guys have questions or comments, we'd love to see them in there. I sure hope that many quit. I get that. Like,
That was an
you
old
get that
one.
mentality, right? Yeah, you get the mentality of like, the less competition, the better. I also think competition's so good. Like for everybody, competition can bring the best out of people, and it can also bring, in some cases, the worst out of people, like some of the things we've seen. Um, but overall, like it can't be about how many people you're competing with. It's got to be about market share, right?
Let's hope the bad ones quit. Can we? I think we can all agree
Yeah,
on that.
yeah,
Let's just say
for
that.
sure.
I mean, you're right about competition. Kobe and Jordan talked about that a lot in Relentless and other books and other conversations. Like if they didn't have somebody on the other team that was an enemy, they would make him an enemy. They
Hmm.
would just flat out like, and the guys were like, "Dude, I'm not your enemy. I want to be your friend." And like, nope, you're my enemy. Like we're going to battle, and I need you to be my enemy to fire up my competitive juices. So, I mean, you're right in terms of like the competitive juices can make you better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, have you seen Magic Johnson speak? He's kind of a funny dude, a little bit of
I
ego,
haven't.
but he talks about Larry Bird and how much he loved that he hated Larry Bird. He's like,
Yeah.
I hated that guy, hated him, but how much he loved having him in the league. He's like, I wouldn't have been half the basketball player I was had I not had Larry Bird, because I went out there like, I got to be better than Bird. I got to be better than Bird. Like
Hmm.
it is true. Like if you can thrive off that, but use it, in a positive way to help yourself get better, constantly. Uh, are you guys, you're in the Northwest, are you guys dealing with, is it getting easier when, things are happening in other companies? Does that make your world a lot easier?
What do you mean?
I mean, you haven't had a shakeup, you haven't had anybody go to jail.
Oh,
You haven't had a lot of issues there. Does that mean it does make it easier to compete in that world, right?
um, like just in terms of like other lenders that have had more adversity than us. Is that kind of how you're framing it?
Yeah, that, or I'm just thinking of like realtors coming to you and going, I'm not dealing with this anymore. There's too much chaos over there, or there's too much, people frustrated with their current relationships.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what's going on the inside of a company, right? And so, we've had a lot of growth, which to your point does feel good. it still has been a difficult year for us. We're not, protected from the adversity that the whole
Hmm.
industry went through. And I honestly, feel bad, some of the drama that happened earlier last month with Fairway and like a possible M&A getting out there. That wasn't the right way for that to get out.
Right.
And I didn't like that. I didn't like how, maybe those two companies were coming together, maybe they weren't. And however that got leaked, I just didn't like how that went down. And everybody deserves a fair shot to get through a difficult year.
Hmm.
So yeah, and in some way, because we've grown, and there's growing problems too, it has been nice. And but it doesn't mean that, everything's perfect. And, we're facing the same amount of adversity than maybe another company that has had a lot more drama than say us.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of drama and like recent news, I'm curious if you're going to touch on the Wells Fargo story this week that they
Oh,
quoted you on.
dude,
If you missed
that was an
everything, if you're
interesting
if you're
one.
still here, like, and Ken wants to talk about it, like here we go. I don't know if he's going to want to talk about it
Yeah,
though.
I can. It was interesting. I got a call from a CNBC reporter, which it's always been my dream to be on CNBC. My buddy Matt Graham is on there all the time, and people don't know he actually lives like 30 minutes from my house. So
MBS
he
Live,
comes
Matthew
in.
Graham.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, he's
before you tell that story, can you hook us up? That's one guy I've never
of course
met or really done a thing with, and I'd love to have him on the show
because
or
he
even
doesn't
maybe
leave his
three.
house.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just a connection would be great. Sorry.
Yep. No, yeah, totally. He's in our CE this year and was last year, but he does. He's a farmer now. Sorry, a lumberjack. He has a blueberry farm in Hillsboro. So he comes up after 2 p.m. because he has to stay in the office constantly, and because he's tracking the markets every single day. One of the smartest dudes I've ever met. And so he's on CNBC, and so I was like, how could I someday be on CNBC? And then they just called, and David in our office was like, hey, do you want to talk to somebody from CNBC? And I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, because they just emailed you. I'm like, oh my gosh. So the dude calls me on Friday and we just chatted. So his deal was he had somebody at Wells who had been, I don't think they were at Wells anymore, but they were talking about the new Wells policy around pricing exceptions. And there was some concern over disparate treatment. So basically, some people get pricing exceptions, others don't. So Wells changed their policy, and the guy from CNBC was like, "Do you think that a lot of people have a pricing exception policy that requires you to get a competitive bid or whatever, or to have at least competition going on for a pricing exception?" I said, "Yeah, I think a lot of companies have a requirement. They're not just handing out exceptions, and if they don't have that requirement, they will because if you don't have that requirement, you're not going to be able to limit the amount of bleed out the back, right?" So we chatted about it a little bit, and I talked to him about there's a apparently when you stop petting the dog, it runs barking. Can you hear that, or is that not? Dude, AirPods are amazing. So anyway, so we talked about the pricing exception deal, and my
ADD.
bigger thing is I know is just how many illegal comp plans there are, because people in a pricing exception are able to take that off of their income, which you can't do. And so I may have brought that up with him, but I don't think that's sexy for their viewers. But yeah, we chatted about it. I said I think that they need to. I have a follow up on that though. So I go in CNBC on Friday. They wrote the article. I'm still not on CNBC technically because I wasn't on video. But
They
after
quoted
that
you. That
article came
counts.
out, yeah,
Hopefully somebody
totally.
can find that article while we're talking here and put it in the chat log because I
Oh
think
yeah,
this
let's
is
put
a,
it in the
a big
chat.
deal.
Yeah. So I go to a compliance conference the last 2 days, and Kiter's there. And so Mitch Kiter, if everybody knows Mitch Kiter, is the
Mhm.
compliance attorney for the industry, one of the top guys. And so we were chatting about it, and then he spoke actually on fair lending, and it's so funny because you can talk to that dude offline about like what he sees, and he's just rolling his eyes like I can't believe some of the stuff I'm seeing right now. So the biggest thing with fair lending and what they talked about with pricing exception policies is your if you require in your policy that somebody bring in an LE, a competitive LE, that's like the dumbest thing you could possibly do for business. Sam just posted that link. Bringing that, you telling a borrower, "Hey, go compete with me," or you saying, "Oh, you talked to another loan officer and they said it was this rate." Well, go through it and get the LE. Like, it's just dumb business, right? And so it's ridiculous to have that be a policy, because it's bad for production, and it doesn't totally solve your compliance problem. So your compliance problem is bigger than that. In that, what's the typical race of borrower that you're giving these exceptions to? What's the typical age of a borrower you're giving these exceptions to? Right. So that's the bigger issue. So the question becomes, how do you document a competitive scenario? And then the second question, how do you track to make sure you're not pricing, in a way that's hurting one group over another? As far as tracking the scenarios, the recommendation is document it. So if your borrower sends you an email that says, here's this deal that I just talked to so and so about, and they've got this rate, you're like an eighth away. Cool. Grab that email, put it in the loan file. If it's a digital loan file, just upload it into the loan file so that you have it forever. Because if the regulator comes in and says, well, why did John get one and Jane didn't? You have to be like, well, let me show you the email John sent saying that if I don't drop an ace, he's leaving forever. So that would be the first protection, is at least have it documented somewhere. If you've got an email, have that physical email, and then you're in better shape. You're still not getting away from the lawsuit over disparate treatment, though. So if the problem comes from when if privilege plays a factor, right? So if you have privilege and you're a white CPA in Lake Oswego or in Bellevue or whatever, you're probably going to call up and go, hey, what are rates really? Like, I kind of track the markets. Here's what I saw. And so the more educated consumer, the person who has the time and energy and focus and internet that they can go do that person's going to be asking for that exception. The person that's just like a first-time home buyer, happy to get their first house generationally, their parents didn't own a home, that person's not going, hey, sharpen your pencil, buddy, because I know you can do better. That person's just saying thank you for the opportunity. And so if we look at home ownership in minority populations is lower than in white populations. And so if we can get that homeowner, that potential homeowner, a good rate, and not have them pay higher because they didn't know they could ask, then that's the ultimate goal. It's because nobody's figured out how to do that, absent fix the education system and do a bunch of stuff socially to put them in a better position to be able to do that. And
Well,
education. I
the
mean,
the
education, yeah.
narrative and the risk to lenders is what they built on that story, which was, I believe from memory, it was females were charged more than males, and a rate turned into race too. Blacks were charged more than whites or Asians or something. And so,
Yep.
and I'm not trying to like turn into Ken Perry here, but like we got to think that through as leaders and lenders. Like, I don't want that narrative out there at all, especially if it's not
Mm-hmm.
true. So how do you dispel? Do you have your policies and procedures in place to make sure that they can't build that narrative against you? And a lot of lenders, if they're being honest, would be like, if anybody comes looking, there's probably not a paper trail as to why, the Smiths got one, and somebody else didn't.
Right.
That's why I feel like, and I almost didn't even want to talk about it because I don't want more drama for the industry, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that might be like the start of something, like to peel back the onion.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't want it to be, but it just makes it way more important. And you've preached this every time you've done CE, like just make sure you got your policies and procedures in place and you are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for your own comp plan.
Yeah. Let me give you one more. We're building a class on this right now. Just what's interesting came out of this conference. There's so much on discrimination and appraising. And really, it's an interesting case because there's like two appraisals that became famous. And both of them were against African American borrowers who white appraiser brought the house in like
Mm-hmm.
stupid low. And if you look at it, yeah, it's signs of discrimination, right? Just ignored perfectly good comps. But because of those couple appraisals, it really made everybody go, wait a second, should we be looking at appraisal discrimination as a potential problem? And then the president talked about it. And so it became like this really big thing. One thing that I didn't even think of, and I think Mitch was the one who brought it up at this conference, is the words that are used in an appraisal. And so we're going to do a class on what words to watch for inside of appraisals. And so if you see the word of like, it's a very diverse community. It's this community has become gentrified, over the
Hmm.
years. Anything like that. So we're basically building a thing where we can figure out what are all the words that would tell somebody that that you're doing something wrong. Tina just chimed in the code
Yeah.
words.
Code
Yeah,
words. Yeah.
there's
Yep.
code words that come up that you go, interesting that you factored that in. And I mean, let's be real. An appraisal is an art, not a science. It's part science, but mainly it's how did you come up with your value? Well, I did this, I did that, and you've seen appraisals where think of when we get an order on our appraisals, how many people will be like, all right, I could probably comp with this way over here. Like they have the
Yeah.
ability to make it whatever they wanted to make it. And so it is a big thing. But the trick is, do you know what words to look for? Are you watching for it? And the big announcement was, hey, appraisal independence requirements don't mean they can be racist. And
Right.
so if you see something, it's okay for the appraisal department of your company to reach out and say, hey, this is not okay with us, and we're taking you off our list forever. You can totally do that, but the appraisal department needs to do it, not the loan officer calling and threatening
Right.
uh, them. Yeah.
I'll let you get
Okay.
to that question, but before you do, let me put my lender hat back on.
Okay.
I kind of came out from a compliance Ken Perry angle, but when I read that story, I'm a loan officer, a lender at the end of the day. I kind of roll my eyes and go, all right, guys, before LO comp, I was gonna give up my commission to go help that person. Now I can't. And so I have to do a pricing exception policy to help that person out. And now you're taking that away from me. Like, guys, most of us are good. Like, I believe that most of us are good and are just trying to do the right thing. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's like I would have given up my commission prior to '08. Now I can't
Right.
do that. LO comp rule changes. So now I get do
Right.
a PE. And now I can't do a PE. Like, where does it end? Like, we're going to have to be able to be competitive. So at the end of the day, I kind of roll my eyes at that, but I also understand the compliance risk too.
Well, and you have to look at if you're getting exceptions on 80% of your deals, then which is the exception, right?
Yeah. Right. Good point.
If 80, then 20% of your deals are getting an exception to go up in rate at that point, because that's not an exception if 80% of the time you're giving up these deals. By the way, Dave Gallegos, we can always refer to him. I can't talk about pricing exceptions without saying, go talk to Dave Gallegos about what he thinks of pricing exceptions. And he would just say, sell, just be a salesperson and close the deal. Um, but yeah, that's the other thing you have to look at is if we have that many pricing exceptions, what are we doing with our rate sheet? Like, why are we making people do pricing exceptions instead of just adjusting that rate sheet? Oh, I got a special guest for us right now. Do you have a few minutes? You guys?
We did not. All right, tell me when my is my audio back on?
Yeah.
We did not plan for this, but from Mortgage Coach,
What's up?
Dave Savage. All right, now in asking questions, you can ask questions of our good buddy Dave Savage as well. Hey, Tina, Herds
It's a
just says,
party now, guys. Look at all those
Hey,
hearts,
Tina.
look at all the
hearts and likes
hearts.
coming through.
Yeah,
How do we get the
nice.
balloons to come back?
Oh, I love the hearts. Love the balloons. Let's go.
Oh my
Ken
gosh, Paul
Pliance.
Lieber just said you're Ken Pliance. I have a shirt that says Ken Pliance and has a Ken doll on it that Cam made for me. It's so dope. I wore it to a conference the other day. All right.
Dude,
So
let's lob some questions Savage's way since
I
he's
know
joining
that's what
us.
we're doing. Dave, gosh, what should we start with here? Ask questions in the chat too. We were just talking about being positive and looking at every opportunity right now. We talked about where the market's going, that acquisitions aren't done, that layoffs are kind of starting to come to an end, but the earlier people laid off, the better they're positioned right now, even though that was super difficult. But mainly, what's happening with the business from your perspective right now.
Well, I interviewed Jeremy Forcier yesterday and found out during the interview that it was the 104th time that I interviewed
Oh,
Jeremy,
geez. Who's
which is like,
counting?
oh my God.
Jeremy is.
Yeah, and the title of the interview was Sprinting Towards the Finish Line. And by the way, I truly believe it was one of the all-time best interviews in the mortgage coach community, and it couldn't have been more timely. So check it out. But about 35 minutes into it, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but a real seasoned mortgage professional said, very clearly, like, hey, if I love the mortgage business, I feel like I'm good at it. I've been doing it for a long time, but financially I'm at the end of my rope. And
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you have for me to turn things around over the next 30 days? Like, it was just like, I almost, and Jeremy almost teared up, like, because he was like, hey, I'm doing really well now and have for 13 years. But he told a story like 13 years ago. And he said it, I had $500,000 in debt. I owed the IRS money. And I was 30 days from really having to think about a different career. So, I mean, it really hit him in the heart. And then we literally spent the rest of the interview just like, okay, if you only had 30 days, what would you do? And you want me to share?
Yeah.
I love that, man.
I mean, we spent 25, 30 minutes on that, but here's where Jeremy went. He went into call your database, call everybody and let them know, hey, it's hard and I need your help. And then we even both gave scripts. I told him that, we had talked early on, you have to be an advisor in the market ahead. Like loan officers, I can close loans on time. I have competitive interest rates. That is not how you gain market share, and that's not the winning platform going forward. You need to be a data-driven mortgage advisor. And so my script, and Jeremy was like, that is what I'm going to be telling all my loan officers to do, is say, I need your help. Call your renters and say, I need your help. I need to be really good at helping people that are renting understand, should you keep renting or is it time to buy and get in the market? I need to be great at that conversation. Will you let me practice on you? And then after you have had a very, not a rent shaming conversation with them, like you're wasting money, you've had a really like empathetic, high emotional IQ conversation, and you've shown me the numbers of what homeownership looks like. Of course, using the mortgage coach versus own, use that. I go, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get really good at having that conversation. You're going to be proud of yourself. You're going to feel good because you're getting out there and you're having that conversation. You know what? You're going to get some renters that are like, introduce me to a realtor. You're going to get some leads. You're going to get some loans, and you're going to get good. You're going to improve a skill. You're going to raise your mindset. It's a positive activity. And then call all the people that own loans and go, you know what? 63% of people have an interest rate of 2% or 3%. What's yours? Oh, 3.57. I need to get really good at having a conversation with those folks on, oh, you want to move up, but you feel trapped by your low interest rate. I need to get really good at helping people look at the options of, should they rent and move up? Should they sell and still move up? Even though, like, you need to get good at having that conversation. So call the people that you know, that you love. They know you, they love you, and practice the conversation. You know what? And that was part of what we talked about. Like, you're going to be proud of yourself. You're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to improve your skills. So that was idea number one. Idea number two, you only got 30 days left. Let's hope you have a pipeline. Jeremy has an incredible script that for anyone that's in his, they're doing a loan, they're in process, that when they say thank you, which is usually when they get approved or they get clear to close, or, there's a point in a transaction where the consumer says, thank you. That is the point where you go, hey, I need your help. Could you refer me to someone that, could use the kind of advice that I've given you? Remember, you're not a loan officer, you're an advisor. So you're not selling loans, you're selling advice. And Jeremy, he's like, that's my number one referral source. Like, I'm still getting referrals from my pipe. So that was idea number two. And then he shared a realtor strategy of how to call realtors, how to have better conversations with realtors. And I'm going to make you guys go watch the interview. I'm sure Ryan or you will put that down below.
Oh, for sure.
And Jeremy did a good job. But I mean, I think, we also kind of built our conversation around a podcast that I listened to over the weekend with Huberman. I don't know if anyone listens to Huberman Labs podcast, but he recently interviewed Robert Greene on how to how to find and achieve, how to find and achieve your life's purpose. And Jeremy had actually listened to it twice before the call. So I had just listened to it. He was on his second listen. And one of the cornerstones to how to find your life's purpose and mission was sense of urgency. He calls it death ground, knowing that, hey man, we don't live forever, and and we need to get after it. So again, a really good podcast. Kid is putting a link to that right now, and we talked a lot about that. But having a sense of urgency. So the link is in there. How come you didn't give up Jeremy's?
I pulled up. Did you see that I copied it on my iPhone and I pasted it in the iPad?
What kind of technology is capable of doing that?
Apple products.
Yeah, right.
Savage, that was awesome. We obviously didn't plan this, but Ken and I opened up, and I love J-Force, huge fan, and it actually marries what we started the conversation with. We were talking about how a lot of people we didn't say 30 days left, but we basically were saying they've been stuck in a negative space, and either you're going to sit there in your analogy and watch day 30 come, and then day 29 is going to come, and day 28, and you're just going to sit there and focus on the negative. And Ken and I were talking about, let's focus on the opportunities. And you even mentioned it too, like marrying everything. I feel better about myself because now I got an at bat versus right. I'm not watching this death, march down to 28, 29, 27, 26. We talked about all the opportunities that we can go focus on and what that happens to, how that impacts our psyche and our momentum. And so we didn't plan this, but man, that was a great way to come full circle. I can't wait to go watch that. He couldn't be more right on. And Dave, is as much as it's hard to admit that, there's a lot of people in the business right now that are going, I got 30, 60 days left, and I'm not sure what to do after that. Well, watch the countdown and stay in your negative space, or go find the opportunities, right?
Yep. And Jeremy went and actually commented on how many of his own loan officers, because he manages a lot of loan officers, how many of them were in that position. Like there's a lot of folks that are in a lot of pain. Well, yeah, there are some loan officers gaining market, and the interview that I did with Daniel Saw in Columbus, Ohio, for the first time, he's the number one market share leader in Columbus, Ohio. Typically, Huntington Bank is number 1 or 2, Rocket's 1 or 2. Right now, Rocket's 3, Huntington Bank's number 2, and Daniel Saw is number 1. And he's got a branch of 35 loan officers that right now in this market average 6 loans per loan officer. Wow. So like it's not just like one outlier producer. It's like a branch that's killing it and gaining market share. It's taking out the big bank and Rocket in this market. Like it's happening. Again, another great interview that I did, and so you can win. It's not an unwinnable market, but it requires mindset, requires skills, new skills, and it requires a lot of activity, a lot of action. Maybe 2 to 3 times the activity and action that anyone in our industry is used to putting out there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you another question. Both of you guys have done 1 billion interviews, 1 billion videos. If you can, top 3 of your most impactful video interviews, podcast episodes. Just go back 16 years.
Yeah, I mean,
are there? That one you said was one of the top ones. Like, can you point to a couple that you're like, if you could just?
Well, and also, I'm not just saying this. I mean that. Right now in this market, that sprint towards the finish line conversation I had with Jeremy, I would say is like number 1. Mm-hmm. I would say the Daniel Saw interview that I did a couple months ago would be number 2, and then the Shant Manosian interview that I did in May. In May, Shant Manosian, number 1 loan officer, in a country, with G-Ray. He said, I can't remember how he said it. I said, like, hey, how are you doing? How are you, performing in this market with these high rates? And he's like, I don't follow the interest rate economy, and I focus on the action economy. And he's like, whatever the date in May, it's like May 23rd. And he goes, it's May 23rd of 2023. And I have met with more realtors, had more conversations, had more masterminds and face-to-face in-person contact with realtors this year than any other year in my career. And like, boom, those are like, I'm not going to go back to Simon Sinek or Jocko, which are two of my all-time faves.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
but I would say that those are the three I would say. Ryan, what you got?
I mean, anything Ken and I have done, we've done some real open, honest, vulnerable things over the years. Easy. One of the most fun was with Savage. We rented out a suite up in Seattle, and it was me, Savage, Todd Bookspan, Denise Donahue, DK, Dan Keller, and Deborah Bird, and just did tons of long form content. That was a blast. And this is right off the cuff, so
Yeah.
there's quite a bit. But then the other one that's
I'm in the room. I know you're.
well, you got to admit, Dave, that was pretty cool, huh? That was a pretty cool day.
Yeah.
Right.
That was that. Well, that was one of my all-time funnest. And then that one where we did that in a coffee shop. Where we went to do a coffee. Anyways.
Yeah, that was a fun one too. That was like getting coffees with closers or something. But anyways, and then the last one was actually one I did this year that a lot of people didn't see, so you got to go back and find it. Grant Schneider, he's going to be the #1 VA originator, Dave, if you want to interview him this year. I think he was 3 last year. I think he'll land at #1 VA, Grant Schneider, in Colorado Springs. And he was talking about what it cost him to get there. And his statement was so provocative, it like stopped me in my tracks. He's like, the first kind of one of the big goals that LOs get is like, I want to make $1 million, right? Like that's a pretty common one. Maybe it's 250, 500, but $1 million, right? And he was telling the story of how he hit $1 million and he resented it so much he wanted to burn that money in front of him. Wow. I was like, wow, that like this is one of the most honest, vulnerable statements because it cost him so much to get it. And now today he's one of the most efficient, nicest guys I've ever met, still the #1 VA originator in the country, and has an amazing work-life balance and will never resent the success that he has again. So that was one of the most amazing interviews I've done recently. We could try to find it and put it in the chat log, but what a crazy statement, huh? You made $1 million, but you want to burn it.
Yeah, that is powerful.
We'll find that. We'll put it in the Coop as well. So the Coop Plus platform will have that in there so people can see it. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to tell you, kind of wrapping this up, and we still have time for a couple more questions, but here's where my head's at right now. So I am in maybe the worst shape I've been in a really long time.
Say something.
It's pretty bad. Huh?
Yeah.
Me too, dude. Me too. I just weighed myself today, and I don't want to say it out loud.
I'm not weighing myself anymore. But this was a decision, and I think we need to take accountability for our decisions. Like this is a decision, and just like being really in shape is a decision. And so I think the first thing for me in making a difference is first realize it's my decision. So if I want to be in better shape, I'll make that decision. But I've just made poor choices. And so in business, I think people have to go, all right, how much of my current environment that I'm in is because of decisions that I've made, right? I decided not to go out there and create activities. I decided not to go out there and do the things that would make me successful. And it's really easy to make that decision right now because, I mean, look around you. It's easy to fit in with people who are struggling through this market. Nobody's going to be like, why are you failing? No, everybody's going to be like, yeah, you're failing because of the market, right? So we like to blame the market, but a lot of it's the decisions that we make on a regular basis to just be this way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still writing my, just a little winter weight. Thanks, Tina. I'm still writing my keynote on my damn program, which is Decide, Act, Manage Next. Because if you don't make a decision, you're just never going to be able to act because you didn't decide to. And so I'm working on that now, and I'm going to do it first with my physical shape because that's the thing most need right now, where I'll make the decision, okay, now I'm going to look better. So then what does acting look like? And then how do I manage that, which is partly getting accountable with somebody else to track, are you doing what you said you were going to do? And then what's the next thing I want to conquer? But I think that's the first thing a lot of people need to do because I've seen people go, like you just said, the market's not going to affect you. I don't really track that, or you said that. I don't really track. It doesn't have to affect you. It obviously will be harder, but if you make the decision that you're going to do X number of loans and those loans exist in the marketplace, and that's obviously the first step is deciding you're going to do it.
Yeah, I do want to throw something in. I do think in this market, to say I want to do X number of loans is not the most important metric. Yes, we want to have a goal for income. Yes, we want to have a goal of how many loans we close. But, I'm currently going through like what were the 10 most viewed videos I've done this year, and Moneyball Mortgage, I did that for executives, and it's one of the top 10 interviews. I think it's top 5. So
we had Moneyball 2.0, Savage, that took off with the 3 of us. If you
Yeah.
remember that, the one that came
Yeah.
right behind
No.
that, one of the most watched this year.
Yeah, and what the message of Moneyball Mortgage is it's measure other things, like measuring how many loans you close, which by the way is not a celebration for most of us. What our volume is, it's not a celebration. And even the people that are at the top, they're like, I did double that this year. It's not a celebration. So I want you all to focus on what's your conversion rate. Like, first of all, do you even know what your conversion is? Do you know how your conversion compares to others in your branch? Do you know how your branch compares to other branches at your company? Like, if everybody obsessed on improving their conversion rate and being one of the top 10% highest converters in your branch, in your region, in your company, the loans will come. Focus on price exceptions, because by the way, for all the loan officers that are listening to this, guys, that's your sales score. If you have among the 10% lowest price exceptions in your company, you're a value-based salesperson. You are delivering value. You are respected for the advice and the service you bring. If you're in the bottom 50%, like in terms of your price exceptions, you're in the bottom 50% of creating value and service for your consumers. You're not following best practices. So if we focused on conversion and we focused on concessions, the loans will come. So that is just my only twist on what you just said.
Yeah.
I'll close with some encouragement.
Oh yeah.
Ken, whenever you're ready, you can go.
I was just going to say activities are so important right now because you're going to do a lot of stuff right now that will not get you a deal this year or next year, right? These are things that you're building relationships so that when the person's ready, that's when it happens. So I love that. I would add just those activities that you're doing. How many meetings? Daniel Harkavy calls it. Remember when he's talking about cups of coffee? He encourages his kids to have coffee with as many people as possible all the time. And that's like, how many cups of coffee did I have with people? How many meetings did I set up?
Can I and I hate to be the guy to keep saying, but this came from the interview with Jeremy. And he said, you know what? I never even knew how to use our tool to go in and look at the production of the realtors I'm meeting with until now. And now I've gone in, I've logged in, I know, how much production the people that I have relationships with. And I know the production of all the people that I'm calling on that aren't giving me business, what their production is. So, in this market, guys, have lots of cups of coffee, but how many potential referrals is that? Yeah. Like if you're having cups of coffee with realtors that are not closing any business, it don't have the potential, like they're not going to be the winners on the other side of this. Let's face it, realtors have even more to be concerned about than we do. Make sure you're having cups of coffee, you're having lunches, you're making calls with people that are successful today and people that have the attitude, the mindset to be successful tomorrow. Like to win in this market, it's about efficiencies, like activity, but efficient activities are what matter most.
Yep. All right, bring it home, Ryan Hills.
I got to take a page out of Renee's book, who we've all been through, one of his seminars or classes or just spent time with him and frame this up. We've had a lot of amazing takeaways. It's been well over an hour. Dave comes in, drops some awesome knowledge, and it all marries up just in a beautiful way. But to frame this up, this whole conversation, I want to give you a visual, and it ties again with what Dave and Jay Force were talking about. A lot of people right now, and this is the most relevant thing we can talk about, have said, I got 30 days left. And we're getting ready to coming up to New Year, and picture that ball. We all do it, right? 10, 9, 8. Well, picture it having 30 days, because that's what Dave said, 30. And all right, we have choice, as Ken said, we have a choice. We can watch it go 30, 29, 28, and count our days down to where we have no more money and are forced to really make a bad decision. Or we can go back to what we all said and go, I'm not going to stare at that anymore. I'm going to go over here and focus on my opportunity. And guess what will happen? That ball will go back up. 20, 29, 30, 31, 32. You're going to add more time. And that's the frame I want you to walk away with. Like lock that visual in my head. Do you want to sit there and watch yourself die professionally, or do you want to go over here and focus on the opportunities and get better at your craft and add more time to that ball? That's the frame I want you to leave you with.
And again, so much gold came from this call with Jeremy that really puts an explanation point on what you just said. I mean, that was just such a great leadership message, Ryan. But guys, here is the reality. Spring home buying season starts now, because the meetings that you're having and that you're driving in January are going to position you for, March and April. And we both said that, like, spring preparation to crush. Remember, this is something that's going to happen a quarter, 3-4 months from now. Spring home buying season is not a month away. It's not 2 months away, but it starts now. Anyways, just wanted to throw that little spring home buying season starts now. And for all the branch managers, listen to this, you're obvious, most of you are producing branch managers. So you're responsible for your own, team success, but you're also a leader and responsible for the people that are in your branch. Spring home buying season starts now. Like, how are you going to close the year strong, and how are you going to come out fighting? I thought, by the way, I loved your family pictures, Ryan. Every time I see that, I always put one hand up, but I'm like, but if we're going into the hills country,
The hills pose always has got one of those.
that, like, one fist is not enough for Ryan, for the hill family.
I like that you got that.
Oh, I caught that, bro.
Well, dude, thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
Turn it off, man. This has been awesome. We're going to drop this into Q Plus. If you're not in Q Plus, we have an app now, both in the Apple Store as well as the Google Play Store, against my better judgment. And so we've got now an Android app, because apparently some people green text. So definitely download those apps. Join us with Q Plus. $360 gets you all the content we create, including the CE. And man, thank you so much, Ryan. And we will see you soon.
Appreciate you guys. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.